So I do this weird thing when I'm reading where I'll put in the margins, like if something relates to me, I'll just write me in the margin. It's the way I kind of infuse my narcissism into the
Yes.
book. And one of the places that like really stood out at the beginning, what you were saying is when you're working at Gourmet magazine, you look at your bosses above you and you're just like, that's not who I want to be. And I had the same experience when I got a job in finance. And after like a couple of weeks, I'm looking around, I'm like, the best case scenario is I'm selling mutual funds it was in New Jersey actually. And I was just like, that's not what I want to do. And so I was reading all of these books about like getting into startups and marketing and entrepreneurship. But there's that voice that's kind of the opposite of what you're saying, where it's like, you're going to be the unique one who can't do it. It's like you're reading all these stories about the people that do it and you're like, yeah, but I'm the exception. I'm the unique snowflake who can't do it. So how do you use, you talk a lot about the strategy of like belief. How do you shift your beliefs where you can make that leap as opposed to being like, well, it's never going to be me. I might as well just stay doing what I'm doing.
Absolutely. So one of the things that we unpack, and hopefully we do a good job of it in the book, is the power of our beliefs, right? So all beliefs are a choice and choices can be changed. And so it takes a little bit of that awareness of even just you calling yourself out, going like, oh, I'm reading all these books, I'm seeing all these other examples, but I have this insecurity in myself that I'm different, that I'll be the one that fails. And forgive me, in California, I don't know if you can hear I've got blowers around me. It's just what happens in Los Angeles. So forgive me for that. Back on track. If you recognize that belief in yourself, if you recognize the voice in your own head that says, I don't think I'd be able to do that. This is why the meta belief of everything is figureoutable is so transformational. Because if you're willing to embrace this notion that everything is figureoutable, then all of a sudden that limiting belief that you may not be able to do it, it's just something that you haven't figured out yet. The 3-letter word yet can help us transform anything. So I think you actually gave us a clue on what we can start doing to transform that belief, which is this. You start actually looking for the opposite. So the limiting belief of like, oh, but I wouldn't be able to do it. So if you start stacking all of the experiences of other people that don't have MBAs or kind of either are in your range in terms of your type of style of growing up, your background, and then going, okay, wait, if all of these people can do it and everything is figureoutable, this is absolutely possible for me too. And again, we go deep into the book in terms of how to unwire those beliefs and how to build up the belief that everything is figureoutable. But that's really one of the first and most important steps is awareness. Because if you're not aware of the dialogue happening in your own head, there's no power that you have to change it. But once you can observe it and not beat yourself up for it, just observe it with curiosity and go, where did I get that crappy idea? That's not useful. That's not helping me. Is anything else possible? Then we start to create some momentum.
And you also talk about that idea of like the truth of that. Like, even if it's not necessarily true in like the most factual sense, what other life do you want to live? Like, it would be better to live with that, even if it's a bit inaccurate than the other way.
Well, yeah. And, truth is an interesting thing. I grew up believing in Santa Claus. So I grew up believing that Santa Claus was real. Then at a certain point, I discovered that wasn't the truth, and for many of us, I mean, if you go back in history, many people believed the truth was the world was flat. Then all of a sudden that belief transformed, right? So the truth can shift. And so I think it's not about magical thinking. It's about really being real with yourself. Is the belief that I'm holding on to, is this serving me? Is it productive? Is it making me feel joyful? Is it helping me be my best, the best that I can possibly imagine myself to be? And if not, who cares what's true? Why don't we focus on what's useful? And so that's where you kind of start to get to unpack things and get a little semblance of control over this whole thing and your heart so that you can move ahead. And as I always like to say, use your special gifts to change the world.
Did you like what you just saw? Well, great, because our YouTube channel is chock full of tips on how to grow your online business and learn from the best in the industry. So make sure you hit that subscribe button so you never miss out. And if you're looking for the absolute best software for entrepreneurs at the lowest possible price, then you should absolutely head over to appsumo.com and subscribe to our email list. Heck, we'll even throw in 10% off your first order just to make it a no-brainer. Now, you're in on one of the best kept secrets in software.